You're listening to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast. My name is Merle. I'm here with my good friend Dante, and we're here to build worlds and tell their stories. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Good morning, or evening, or afternoon, whenever you may be. Welcome back to the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Dante.
And I'm the other one. My name is Merle.
And we're here, as we are every week, to talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building, the arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting and telling stories born from it.
That's right.
This is, if I may say, the cool down episode, where I tried to piece myself back together after a wonderful but exhausting vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For those of you who didn't catch the previous episode, episode 30, I've been in Europe for almost 2 weeks, where for the first time in our entire friendship, Merle and I got to meet and hang out face to face.
Yes. And it was amazing and wonderful.
What a
And
wonderful
maybe
time.
just to tune our audience into the current situation, it's Tuesday now, and I think you like came back hours ago. Like it hasn't even been,
Yes.
I think, 48 hours when we literally spoke in person.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Don't know why you're able to record at all, but you know.
Our last moments of speaking together were at a cold train stop late at night in Holland, less than 40 hours ago.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been traveling for in airports or on planes for 20 plus hours, trying to swing my way back to New York.
Yep.
Which was,
crazy.
Again, less than 2 days ago.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Again, it was a wonderful time. I'm from New York. Merle is from Holland. After 3.5 years of hanging out, playing D&D online and recording this podcast, this was the first time we ever met in person. So if you can listen to episode 30, our excitement probably reflects that.
Yep, for sure. We have to kind of cool. Yeah, I think you said it properly. We have to cool down now and get used to the distance again. It's so sad. No, we'll be good. We'll be good. We'll just ease into it with this episode.
Oh yeah. So feel free to relax. Put on some music, I guess.
Cozy socks, yeah.
Yeah, cozy socks, definitely. Wash some dishes, whatever you got to do.
Bucket of tea. Yes, let's go.
I do want to put it out into the atmosphere here that we did, in fact, record a super secret episode on video, which was the first of our kind.
That's right.
One of a kind for this podcast. And we'll release it eventually, somehow, someday. I don't know the details of that.
Yeah, you'll get to see it somewhere at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll think about it.
But yeah, it was just so much fun. And I had a lot of fun traveling. Again, first time traveling solo, traveling to Europe, meeting Merle. It's just so much firsts. And I'm coming back, catching my breath after
coming back a new man. World-weary traveler.
Life-changing. I'll put it out there. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Of course.
Amazing.
Okay. Any updates on your end in the 40 hours that we've been apart?
The funniest thing. Well, I guess not really. It's weird how suddenly there's no updates when you've seen each other, like in the flesh.
Yeah, it's so wild. And I did say this in the previous episode, but looking at you when I'm talking to you was just such a weird, bizarre thing. It could not.
It's the weirdest thing because our friendship usually doesn't work that way. That's not our language because
we're staring at
just,
like a D&D screen or just our notes for the podcast.
We're always pixelated. Yeah.
Always in the distance on a little tiny rectangle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no updates for you?
I mean, not really. I don't think so.
Fair. That's true. That's fair. All right. Then I guess we can jump right into that.
Sure.
For episode 31, as we do with every episode, we both bring a topic to the transatlantic table. I have a topic about world building and storytelling. You have one as well. We don't know what the topics are beforehand, and we kind of surprise each other with it. And we will always end these episodes with a prompt. We will entirely improv a scene or story, depending on what one person has for the other.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I'm very ready. Let's go.
All right. So for my topic for today, and I think it's topical, but you can correct me if it's not. Today, I want to talk.
Good purpose.
I want to talk about hometowns. Hometowns. Everyone has one. Hometowns are often Hometowns are an often crucial storytelling touchstone for the protagonist of any story, and from a world-building perspective, it provides essential insights into the state of the known world. So just to start off this topic, because I think it's a nice and full one, the first question I want to toss out there,
I love it,
is what makes a good hometown? What makes a solid, satisfying, static hometown that we can either begin the story with or introduce later through details from the character? What are like the essential building blocks to make one?
Ooh, this is already getting complicated because it really depends on what you want from your story, right? Like for me, the first thing that comes to mind is just the fact that any hometown usually is kind of nice, but a little dull in a way. Like there needs to be some change to happen. Like, you know, people are traveling out, or the main character finds something is lacking, or finds that they're the scene of Beauty and the Beast comes to mind, where it's like, I want more than this provincial life. You know, the sort of provincial life is nice and cute, and it's a nice first opening musical number, I guess. But you know, there's more in the world, and that's kind of the feel that you want to get from whatever is not in the hometown. The more shouldn't be in the hometown. But on the other hand, I also really like when the hometown reflects who the character is, right? So there's going to be so much things in there, like physical things, places and family and, I don't know, the school they went to and stuff like that, where they grew up in. Their accent or their family values, or how well traveled they are, or how, I don't know, all of those things. So it should also really reflect who you want your character to be, because it's going to have influence on it, I guess.
Of course. Every time I think of the word hometown, there's this like wonderfully nostalgic track that I always come back to. It's from a game called Octopath Traveler, which I've never actually played.
I feel like I've heard of this. Yeah, this has come in some kind of YouTube autoplay playlist somewhere, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had this particular song on loop at least 50 times over, because if you ever get a chance to look it up, anyone listening as well, the song is called Cobblestone Nestled in the Hills. And I love it because
sounds very homey, yes.
Yeah, from the first couple notes, it evokes like a sense of warmth and comfort that can only be described as like, this is home. This is where you come from. It's like a big old hug in a song. So when we think about hometowns, like you said, it's a place that the character grew up, but there's also a sense of like, even though it's very nice and comfortable here, there's a sense of wanting, right? There's a reason that the character wants to leave, whether it be for like aspirations for adventure or not feeling comfortable at home, or, you know, a necessity, things like that.
Yeah.
And there's times where we introduce the hometown right at the start. So you get to see like, I don't know, the farmer next door, the cows in the field, you know, the errands that you run throughout the day.
The good old farmer next door.
Oh, yeah.
That familiar trope that we always get to see in the first scene.
Everyone's favorite farmer next door. And we're introduced to this, and usually it's very cozy and nice, but we see like a sense of discontent from the main character, as in like, oh, they don't want to be here, or there's some problems they don't want to deal with, or they're always aspiring for greater things. So I feel like when we see the hometown, we see not only insight into the world itself, but insight into the character, like their wants, their needs, their desires, things like that.
And specifically, the thing that is missing is also probably missing in the hometown. Like, you know, Belle is singing about more than the provincial life, and, you know, she's reading books and nobody cares about libraries in the main town. So it's also, even in the regard that the unsatisfying feeling, right, is also reflected in the place that you grow up in. Because the thing that you're missing is also literally not around, because that's why you have to go find it elsewhere.
Yes, of course. And we have to discuss this point of view, right? We have to discuss this angle that a lot of stories take when it comes to hometowns, where if it's not introduced at the beginning and it's introduced later, it's usually because something bad happened there.
Yes.
The classic tragic hero backstory from hundreds of years ago, many tragedies begin this way, is a terrified child staring at burning buildings of their hometown. Right. Yep. It's the classic send off. Like, you cannot stay here. You got to move forward. You got to avenge something, accomplish something, because this is no longer home, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And that's also in general brings up a good question of what is what is a home in general, right? Like a hometown is one thing, but then there's a very famous saying, I think, that the home is the people that you have around you, or, you know, the family around you, or the found family, I guess, in whatever place you are. A home can also be a traveling thing, you know, the sort of traveling circus trope, I guess.
Of course.
Fits in nicely into this. So the hometown is usually at least a very specific place, right?
Right.
And the fact that it is so physical also can make you, as the storyteller, wonder what the physical needs to reflect and what the people in it need to reflect. Like, is the hometown, the feeling of the hometown, is it provoked due to the main character having a super overbearing mother that doesn't let them go out at all, or always lets them run errands and stuff, through which we experience the town, right? Then it's not really the physical place that's bothering them, but more the people or the persons that are in their, you know, immediate vicinity having influence on them. And the other way can be true too, when there's not a lot of well-known people there, but the town can feel very homey or very, you know, people talk about specific cities really fitting with their vibe, I guess, or someone really falling in love with a city they've never been in before, right? That's also an interesting other side of the coin, I guess. That is especially the physical place that makes it feel like home or feel a certain way. So, and both are interesting, and it can be a combination, of course. It usually is, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting to look at it from all angles, because there's a lot to it. There's a lot that makes one hometown feel homey, I guess.
We often, from the hometown, establish the main character or the protagonist's main foundational identity points, like their personality, what they value, what they cherish, things like that. It's often like, oh, why do you carry these around? Or why do you always greet people in this way? Well, that's how we did it back home. You know, this is the food I like. This is the people I talk to. This is what I like to play in the backyard when I was stressed or sad. You know, it's a very crucial building block, and you'll rarely ever see a main character go through the story without having some sort of hometown, some sort of origin point to which they can trace the core of their being. And another fun point, well, not fun, another interesting point about hometown.
Another tragic point.
Yeah, another not necessarily happy point.
Sure.
Is that hometowns, as wonderful as they are, usually the story doesn't dwell there.
Right.
To move the plot forward, you can't stay in one place. You have to have a reason to push the character out of their comfort zone. That often requires leaving the place where they feel most comfortable, where they're not challenged or threatened or anything like that. A great parallel to this is a very simple one that many people understand are the starting points of every Pokemon game. Like, you wake up from your bed, you get out of your house, you grab your first Pokemon, and you head out on an adventure. And then several hours of play later, you return back to your hometown, changed, grown, like accomplished. And everything is still as small and petite and welcoming as it used to be. And you realize this incredible growth that you've experienced, right? The sharp contrast to who you once were and who you become. It's a cornerstone. Almost always the hometown doesn't change unless the story requires it to. Mostly because it represents its core identity.
Yeah, for sure. I think it also is interesting how, kind of what you were saying already, like the town can stay the exact same place with the exact same people doing the exact same things, you know, only time has passed and that's all the change there's been. But then because you've changed so much, your perspective makes it almost a different town entirely, because suddenly you have all these different values and all these different things that you've seen and experienced and are part of your kind of worldview, I guess, now, that make this town look even smaller than it may have already felt from the beginning. Or at first it might have been a nice cozy village for you, or, you know, the place that reminds you of your family, or, you know, all that stuff. And then after you've gone through so much changes and seen so many alternatives, basically, the main town is suddenly, you know, not that impressive anymore. And it's really just a footnote on all the other things that you've experienced, which is interesting, because then the town itself doesn't change at all. But because you've changed, it looks wildly different and feels different. And the people suddenly behave weird because you're not fitting in anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I love that trope. When, like, the lancer of the group or the second in charge of the group leaves the group and returns home, and they come back and they're back to what they previously felt comfortable with. And they realize that they've changed so much that it's no longer comfortable. It's no longer the home that they're looking for. They have this idealized perspective of what their hometown used to be, what their happiness used to be. And they realize through their adventures that that's changed, that home is, you know, where the heart is. It's no longer in the hearth of their family home, but rather with the found family that they've gained over the
stupid saying
travels.
is actually true.
Yeah. Love that trope.
No, but it's true. Love
it.
It's really good. Really good.
Yeah. That's basically what I wanted to say about hometowns. I think it's so important in terms of storytelling. It always evokes these warm feelings. Unless it's lit on fire, then it's very, very warm.
Also very warm, you know. Yeah, pretty hot.
But it's just a very fun and heartfelt topic that I love getting into, and I just think about it every time I hear that one song. I'll link it to you later. I'm sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm really curious now, but I feel like in general, like these 8-bit sort of nostalgic games provoke this feeling already. Even though like sometimes I just put up a bunch of Pokemon songs, even though I haven't played it that much at all. Like I'm not even that much into it the way you are or my brother was when we were younger. But then still the songs are just so great and make me feel so cozy inside. So, you know, that makes it pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, definitely link that to me, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'll send it your way.
Yeah, amazing.
And I believe we're going to jump to your topic. What do you got for just today?
At last, there's one episode where the bridge does not make sense. Because I think they're very different today. They're very different.
There's no way we can make it happen. Let's see what it is.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, now here's this prompt zero of this episode. how to make this work together. From hometowns, we very unnaturally jump to the idea of what I want to talk about today, which is high society.
What? That links so well. What
does
the heck?
It link well?
That links so well. Yeah, it's like.
Well, explain this to me, Dante. Sure.
Yeah. You got that. They got that humble music playing in the background. The pan flute accented by like. Soft
we're doing
shakers,
like aesthetics now. Okay, sure. Keep going.
You pan over that your friendly farmer. Of course, he looks towards the sky. It looks like it's gonna rain today. You know, and you see it pan all the way across the sky. Quick shift to the left, and you see. In the far distance, the kingdom, right? You could see the pillars of white all the way in the distance.
Okay, we're doing like a fade out. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the pan flute is slowly replaced by violins and cellos, and we arrive in the grand halls of high society. There's your pitch.
Jesus. Okay. Well, never mind.
Free prompt for the people right there. Free prompt for the people.
Congrats, you just got that for free. Awesome. Okay, sure. Well, I guess it makes sense. Yeah, sure. Why not?
The podcast we famously charge for, you know.
Yeah. Yes. Feel grateful, people. Yeah.
All right. Talk to me.
So here's the pitch. Here's the thing that interests me about this. Perhaps good to mention that we've both been very much into Dropout's A Court of Feying Flowers.
Yes.
Which is a live play D&D, or well, is it D&D? Yeah, I think it's D&D. Yeah. D&D campaign where everything is basically existing in the Fey realm, as we all love. I love fairies and everything related to it, so this is right up my alley.
It is,
and it's very high society. It's very posh people doing posh things like masquerades and, I don't know, tea parties and stuff like that. It's very interesting and cool. And the whole mechanics about this game are also very much steeped into high society, I might say. There's letters being sent, right? There's official duels happening. It's all very esteemed and nice and interesting to watch. I love this kind of stuff. And we've been into this one specifically, so that's why I wanted to talk about this topic today.
Of course.
I think high society is both the most arrogant and the most interesting setting for any story at all, because it just has so many rules to it. There's so many traditions. There's so many sort of backgrounds and long-lived history that precedes it that people have to take into account. You can never really say what you want to say. There's the whole language about it is different. And I think it's a very interesting bubble for a story to take place in. It's a different way of introducing characters to each other or having dialogue at all, or, you know, conflict looks different. And suddenly small things such as a handshake or people not being accompanied by their usual, I don't know, royal guard, suddenly all those kind of minute details have a great importance because it's not the way things usually go, right? And I really love this kind of nitpicky system, I would like to call it, and I think it's interesting to delve into a little deeper. So I'm thinking you've watched A Court of Feying Flowers, or part of it.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm even further than you now. Yeah, I binged this real hard.
I think I'm one episode behind you, even though I started first. Yeah.
I will not talk about it too much, but I was to start it off interested in how you look upon this setting in relationship to A Court of Fairy Flowers, but also in general in storytelling. Like we've talked about academia and stuff before, right? They have some similarities. Just interested in your thoughts on it.
It is so fun to watch Regency type series. And this is why. This is why I think it's why.
Regency, that's the word, yeah.
First of all, they're rich, right? These people have money. These people have influence. They have power.
Money. Yeah.
Individually, they have access to vastly different worlds than what we're used to, and even to each other, right? So you take a whole bunch of people who have access to theoretically whatever they want, and then you ask the question, well, what are they looking for, right? What can money not buy?
Yeah.
What is left to define in somebody's character that cannot be solved by throwing money at it? And that right there is so fun, because then you start tapping into what is forbidden, what is not allowed by their culture and the rules, and what allowed them to build up all of this money. What are the taboos that they cannot tap into because of the position that they've gained for that advantage, you know?
Yeah, sure.
So with that in mind, you start talking about traditions, right? And traditions kind of like the framework at the start, right? Because traditions in this genre are made to be broken, right? They're implicitly set up by the story writers or whatever the world entails. The fun thing is that they're made to be challenged, right? For example, you are a fancy individual whose family's built something off of like a mining expedition, and you have tons and tons of wealth and gold and status, and suddenly you are charged to continue that wealth, continue that success. So what does that mean for your life? You can no longer just go off and adventure or gallivant. You can't like take part in normal people activities because there is something to sustain, something to keep intact. Right.
Yeah.
And that requires making sacrifices of your own personal life to keep going. And that might not necessarily be what your character wants. Right. That might not necessarily be what they dream of. You know, they always talk about what do you have to do and what's your dream? And they don't always align. So Regency sets up those perfect situation of like people who want something they can't have and people who have traditions that they want to break. And for people like us who are, you know, we're going to admit it here, we're not rich, right? We never get to experience this kind of stuff. So it's so fun to grab the popcorn and watch. That's why
that in general is already a great reason. You can just be posh for a second and like be totally arrogant and don't be blamed for it, because it's not the real world. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. But aside from that, yes, I mean, it's a sort of real world. At least you're faking whatever you're doing, which makes it better. But yeah, you touched upon a lot of very interesting stuff there. Specifically, what I thought of as you were explaining, kind of the lack of freedom, I would almost call it, that you almost automatically gain, I guess, or the fact that you lose your freedom because you have so much access to money and because it's important for the family or the bloodline, I guess, to maintain that wealth.
Of course, yeah.
Suddenly you're kind of losing your individual freedom because of it. And there's this interesting thing, right? That money solves a lot of things. Specifically, if we're looking at the sort of two extremes here, right? When you barely have any money to spend, you're struggling to get food on the table. This is your daily life, right? Everything revolves around how can I have enough money for my absolute basic needs.
Yes.
Sucks. Because there's a lot of things you can't do, you can't buy, you can't spend time on because you need to put all your effort in basically surviving. And usually that goes in current day society, I guess, that goes through obtaining money for food or for warm clothes or for, the gas of your stove or whatever. And then on the entire other side of that, if we see this as a sort of scale, right, sort of gradient, the more money you obtain, the more freedom you have to do whatever you want and to spend time on things that don't necessarily, get you money or get you food because you have enough of it. You have time or you have a job that pays better or for one reason or another, you have enough money to not think about your daily issues or your daily needs anymore. So that makes you more free, obviously, right? You can do other stuff. You can think about what you want for yourself. You can, et cetera, et cetera. And then at some point that scale tips back again, because if you have so much money that it's almost a sort of a longer lasting thing, right? It becomes bigger than just your your family or your life. It becomes this longer lasting thing that you have to build upon. And the more money you have, the more you can invest in it, and et cetera, et cetera. And this becomes a thing that's larger than you. And then all of a sudden you, as the most recent part of the generation, how do you say that? The latest addition to the family that is able to uphold it, right?
Sure.
You have a burden to keep that going and to keep that momentum of wealth, I guess, in your family or in your pockets at least, right? And then all of a sudden that means, despite that you can do everything you want with your time and with whatever people you want, et cetera, but then that means all of a sudden that you have to spend time on doing things that will increase that wealth, or marrying the right kind of people in order to gain or maintain that wealth. And that also is very much not freeing in a way. I mean, it's very comfortable in regards to, not being poor makes it instantly a better situation, right? But there's different issues that suddenly arise when you gain a certain ridiculous amount of wealth like that. And that's kind of where we're at in this genre, right?
Right.
So there's a very strange combination of problems that suddenly become bigger that we don't have to deal with on an everyday basis because we can just chill and don't have to worry about, I guess, family wealth and whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
I think one of the biggest things of this genre that separates it from others is the idea of expectations, right? Like when you're poor or when you don't have much to your name or your legacy, the expectations are low, and therefore the freedom to become whatever you want to become exists in theory, obviously. If you don't have money to reach for it, then it's difficult. But
sure.
There's a very different story told when your life is already planned for you, right? When your legacy, when your marriage, when your basic freedoms of who you want to be and what you want to do has already been defined. So what choices do you make in light of that? It's the constraints. It's from a storytelling standpoint, it's constraints. When people have loads of money, usually you have the idea like when you have money, you are free to do what you want. But in this very specific genre, they cling onto the expectations. They cling onto what is necessary for you to do. And the fun in it, the release in it is when they don't.
Yeah, for sure.
And knowing the fallout, the consequences, the ravenous romances that come of it, all of these crazy things of
the juicy details.
Oh yeah, all of that.
The primal stuff. Yeah.
We're talking about the Tudors, we're talking about Bridgerton, we're talking about just all of the stuff that is just
all of the good things.
They shouldn't do that. Oh no, but what will the family think? That kind of thing. Oh, so
for sure.
fun.
And I think that's an interesting point as well. Like somehow in this genre particularly, there's just so many layers to uncover before you get to the human emotion, right? There's so many rules and, the way that people behave and stuff, all these traditions and expectations that we talked about. There's a lot of them before you can, you have to break a lot of them before you can get to a sort of honest conversation and a sort of basic emotional dialogue, I guess, that is real and not just for whatever other kind of sake. And I think a nice little side note to mention here is also the way that geisha culture works. I don't know if you know anything about this, but I think a few years ago or something I read about the way their kimono patterns and their sort of traditional dress of geisha culture can reflect a lot of what you want to say in the moment as the person wearing it. Like this was a book related to fashion, right? So it specifically talked about these patterns and textures and stuff, but it was super interesting culturally as well. I was like, wow, I should really buy a history book about this or something because it's great. But they just talked about how many layers of kimonos will, the first layer will be very long, so that will reach over your wrists. And then the second will be a little bit shorter, or some will be see-through, or the lines that are forming because of the amount of layered kimono or, shirt kind of tops, I guess, that you're wearing. I don't know how all these things are called.
Yeah.
But these layers literally would say certain things about either your status or whether you were married or not. And then the color of the first layer would mean this. And then whether the second one was see-through or not would mean if it, all these kind of ridiculous details that suddenly you had to think about when you were just dressing. That's just the first thing. And then the whole thing about when someone is pouring tea and then there their arm extends a little bit and you see the naked skin of their wrist, and it was like ridiculously sensual and stuff, and it's just your wrist, you know.
What? Exposed wrist? Oh, we can't talk about it on this.
Yeah.
We can't talk about it on the podcast.
We went too far. Yeah. And it's so interesting because after all this, it's kind of literally peeling an onion at this point, right? There's nothing else to worry about except for the way you look, what music you're playing, what education you have. So all of that starts to mean everything because there's no other issues you have to worry about. And that's, it's ridiculous, but also so wonderful.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Because the idea of high society is that you have so many eyes on you. So like you said, it is what you wear, it's what you do. But the constraints, even on what you can say, right? The words you speak, everything that escapes your lips is heard by somebody, received by someone, and interpreted by many to be whatever they want it to be, right?
Yeah.
So
there's a whole diplomacy going on. Yeah, for sure.
Whenever you have just the faintest of affections coming from these characters that are so constrained, they have so much weight, right? There's so much gravitas to what they say that any sort of like, well, you know how they do it, like looks of longing, Gray's touch on the hands, you know,
the best
like
stuff.
just the little things, those little things. But that means so much because with only so many words they're allowed to say, what stretches beyond that has so much weight and so much meaning.
For sure. And that also means when it finally comes to that moment where you are sort of portraying honest emotion, or where the characters do have an honest discourse, it means so much more because you came from so far, right? You had to go through all this tradition and all these sort of customs and stuff before you could get there. So the final moment of actual human connection barely happens in these kind of environments, right? Because there's always a subtext, or there's always a context to things. But when you finally get to that actual honest connection or emotion or whatever it is that you end up with, or fight, whatever, you know, it's that much more satisfying because it took so long. It started with a look and it took forever before it became a handhold, you know.
2.5 seasons to hold hands. I can't. Regency takes too much out of me.
Honestly, now that I think about it, Regency is the best slow burn romance environment I've ever thought of. Oh my God,
that's
Regency
so
series
real. Have great slow burns. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
But
this is like it's almost impossible to not have a slow burn in Regency, I think.
Yeah, obviously the genre leans heavily into these pining romances, and it's just like, oh, will they, won't they? Ooh, did they say that? Ooh, did they say that?
And we're here for it. You know, it's why I watch this shit. Yeah,
we're here for it.
Part of the game.
Entirely in our wheelhouse. I will not denounce any sort of this stuff. This is totally like in my genres of things that are just really, really fun. But yeah, it is a very fun genre. I am very much enjoying Court of Fey Flowers. I don't need to sponsor Benton 20. They don't need our sponsor, but boy, is it fun.
Yeah.
It's very, very
it's
fun
so
to watch.
Fun. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
That's kind of all I had on that, topic. I think. Yeah.
We'll come back to it, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's wrap up our podcast with the prompt that we always give at the end. Today, I'm tossing a prompt over to Meredith. She does not know what I'm going to give her as a prompt, so she's going to improvise whatever it is. I think it's a simple one today, but it should be a little bit of fun.
Bring it on.
Let's try this. So the prompt you have today is to pitch a story where a villain must begrudgingly protect their hometown.
Oh, the villain is protecting their own hometown.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. Let me think on this for a sec.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the threat here, right? Because the villain is the threat, but somehow they are feeling threatened by something else because their hometown's being destroyed or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's either the party or the adventurer, the main character, whoever. Yeah. I guess the main character is somehow destroying this town or destroying this place. Yeah, let's just do like a usual hometown.
Sure.
I feel like I'm gonna like brainstorm on the spot here as I'm figuring this out. So bear with me here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the villain is, despite being a very cool guy, let's say he's a guy, he's having the evil mustache, right? He's having the cool accent. He's having the cat that he's petting
of course,
daily.
Naturally.
It's it's part of the aesthetic. He's worked very hard to obtain this aesthetic, right? It took some time. He found like a real good cave that was super dark and spooky for him to just like relish in or like revel in, I guess. I don't know, either of those words. So he's been doing pretty good for himself. But actually, the one thing that the main adventurers, the main group of characters don't know is where he comes from. And that he's actually a pretty regular dude. Just came... Maybe his dad's just kind of the farmer next door, actually, or
That's
lives close to them. It's been just a usual farming town. This kind of makes me think a little bit about that Avatar episode with Jet, talking about slow burn, by the way, where he's spoilers. Yeah, well, spoilers, I guess.
Where the series is 10 years old. Whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. We've talked too much about Avatar. You should know by now that there's going to be spoilers if we're bringing it up. This was the episode where he, for the greater good, right, wanted to break open a dam for, I forgot kind of what the reason was. I guess the Fire Nation was in there.
Yeah,
and then they wanted to kill the Fire Nation people, but then also they would basically flood the entire town, so all the townspeople would die. And this was the conundrum, the sort of issue in this episode, and why they eventually split up with Jet, who initially was a good friend and then suddenly became ethically confused, I guess.
Right.
And that was the sort of climax of it. So here I feel like the hometown should be the most average place, right? It has maybe a nice river to it, or I don't know, it has like a cute mountain in the back. There's some farming, there's some people like taking care of sheep.
Right.
There's maybe 2 shops and a church, something like that. The villain guy came from this town and was super glad to leave it because he was meant for greatness. He was not ready to live his life in this depravity that's called farming. How dare you even bring it up?
Manual labor.
Roamed the world. How dare you? Yeah, we all hate it.
Manual labor. Everyone hates it.
Yeah, there's your tagline. Let's go. So he left. He made an entire new life for himself, a very simping, depressing life. But he's become his own person in a way. And then this adventuring party is, I guess, turning up in this town. The villain is, looking at them from afar in his, crystal orb or whatever. And he's seeing all the stuff that they're doing, right?
Right.
And the adventuring party kind of strolls through this town and is thinking like, what a dang cute little town this is. And maybe they're even like meeting their father. I don't know. That could be a thing. That would be the weirdest thing. And they would be like, yeah, we had a son, but then he went out in the world to seek his own fortune, and we're still pretty proud of him. And they're the cutest little like potato mom and dads there ever been. Yeah. And the villain is just like, how dare you even bring me up? This is not the image I want to portray. Maybe they even...
There's like baby pictures on the wall.
Oh, okay. Here's the interesting part. I'm coming around to this.
Okay. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
So here's the thing. The father actually mentions the boy's name. And then the adventuring party's like, wait, do you mean like Kevin from like the Cave in the Mountain cabin? And they're like, yeah, that's Cave Kevin. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know he lived in the cave, but that sounds pretty cool for him. That sounds like pretty aesthetic. And they're like, wait, your son is Kevin? Your son is Kevin, the mountain man Kevin, the evil guy that has been like giving us shit all year? And they're like, I don't really. Kevin is pretty unusual here. Usually, everyone's called, stuff with apostrophes in between. So, I don't know many other Kevins, let alone the Kevins that are living in a cave. So,
surely not our Kevin.
No, it can't be. Also, this cave is maybe not even that far. He really feels super out there and stuff, but then also it's just like a day's hike or something.
Oh no,
kind of dumb, yeah. So then Cave Kevin, I guess, which is
Kevin.
The way he is now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everyone listening. I'm sorry to this problem. Yeah. So Cave Kevin is like angrily sulking in the corner and being like, how dare you talk to my parents, and how dare they bring up that I came from there, and how like it's destroying my image. It's destroying my image. I can't have it.
My brand.
Brand. And then the adventuring party is in an how do you say that? Has a dilemma, I guess, because now they know that this is the parents of Kevin, and by either kidnapping or, blackmailing these wonderful, kind farming people, they could finally get rid of all the shit that's Kevin's been giving them. Because now they know something that Cave Kevin doesn't know, or I guess that he doesn't have control over, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the thread is basically that they wanted to, despite the potato mom and dad being very nice and kind to them, they kind of have to destroy their house, maybe, because then finally Cave Kevin will shut up, or at least show up and fight them at last instead of simping in their cave. And now Cave Kevin's like, well, fuck me. Fuck me. What do I do?
I gotta go.
Like, I don't want to go back there. Like, this is not, I don't want to like, kind of, how do you say this? I don't want to confirm that this is where I came from, and that these are my stupid potato parents that are great to strangers, and like offer them their freshly grown vegetables and stuff. Oh, no. But also, if they destroy it, I don't have parents anymore, and that's a problem. But I'm super evil now. Like, I shouldn't care about this. I shouldn't care about my parents. I shouldn't care about where I come from. But then, he still maybe loves them deep in his heart, even though he's been like trying real hard to get rid of the
soft boy
stupid
image.
tiny town image. Yeah. So what's he gonna do now? I guess suddenly the adventuring party, because he has become a sulking enemy in the corner of the cave and has been giving them shit all year, suddenly that is the reason why the town, or I guess these wonderful farming people, are under attack. And now he is the reason for this problem. That's now his problem, even though he doesn't want it to be.
I love that.
Awfully complicated. I love how I eventually got there. Took me some time, but we made it work.
How will Cave Kevin resolve this conundrum? Will the heroes be forced to make
about that.
less than moral choice? Find out on the next episode of not our podcast.
Let's not revisit this.
Not our part, somewhere else.
Yeah. So someone else can take this and run with it.
If you know how the story ends,
there's
let us
lots
know.
of improvement.
Feel free to reach out to us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com if you want to tell us how the story ends. Fantastic take on the prompt. Loved my favorite.
I don't know if I love it or hate
Mom
it,
and Dad.
Didn't we also make like a hunk medieval knight character that lives in New York? Wasn't he also Kevin, or was he someone else?
I don't know if he was Kevin. But
I feel like he's just
definitely from
Kevin,
this
though.
town. Definitely from this town.
Yeah,
for sure.
Gotta be the same town. Yeah.
Love that.
Maybe they knew each other. We're hometown
maybe
friends.
they were friends.
Wonderful.
The greater world is building out here.
Oh no.
This is what we do at this podcast. Thank you again for listening as we wrap up this episode. We hope that this has encouraged you or inspired you to write better stories, honestly.
To build your own Cave Kevins.
To build your own Cave Kevins and write out your world.
Cassandras and Cave Conans and Cave... yep.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Where was I? Oh, okay. Hold on.
Sorry. Totally.
You're good. If you have the urge to world build and storytell, it's fun. Just do it.
Yeah.
And as you go on this grand adventure, as we have and encourage you to do as well, always remember, your rivers are wrong.
Yep.
Have a good one.
See you later.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes that you'd like to hear us cover, feel free to contact us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Our intro and outro music is written by Maarten Schellekens. Thanks for that. And again, thank you so much for listening. We hope to see you at the next one.